Hello, welcome to a sort of what if talking about Operation Royal Marine, which you may or may not have heard of, and frankly I was looking into because I realised I didn't know huge amounts about it, so I thought I'd tell all of you about it as well. So it doesn't involve deploying a lot of Royal Marines into the troublesome areas. It might have been quite a good idea, floating a load of Royal Marines down the Rhine to create havoc in German cities. Might have actually worked quite well, to be honest, but never mind, that wasn't the plan. It was more like this. Use of mines, except not the stock photo mines, which, yeah, I got stock photo of. Instead, it was a special type of mine. Now, the idea behind this was either a Winston Churchill special type of idea, or came from Edward Spears, who was his kind of military advisor and liaison, and then adopted by Churchill, and as Spears put it, sufficiently that Churchill then thought it was his own idea. The idea was first presented certainly to the cabinet in Britain in November 1939 by Churchill, and the idea was to disrupt German inland waterway traffic, particularly along the Rhine, by the use of mines. Now, a special type of mine was developed for this. They were known as W bombs. And the W stood for water, not Winston Churchill. And the cunning thing about them is that they used kind of water to activate phases of things. So you would drop them either from an airplane parachuting or just dump them into the river. And we'll get onto that bit. And they had something that was basically based on Alka-Seltzer tablets that one of the staff members on this little design team kept around because he probably was drinking too much and staying up too late. And so he had Alka-Seltzer tablets, and they found that they dissolved at a predictable, regular speed, and so they used them for the timings to do things like activate the mines. So you drop the mine in the water, and about 5 minutes later, the Alka-Seltzer tablet-based thing would dissolve away, and your mine would activate. And then they also, because they were dropping them in the Rhine, and the Rhine flows quite a long way, it would go through Germany and into the Netherlands, who were neutral, and we didn't want to mine the Netherlands. So they had to have them deactivate as well. And so you had it set up so that they would do that. And the river's flow was fairly predictable. At, I think, depending on the kind of weather conditions and river levels, either 3 to 4 miles an hour or 5 or 6 miles an hour was the kind of current speed. And so you just knew that how long it would take from where you dumped the thing in. And so you make sure that it was non-lethal, not too nasty by the time it arrived in the Netherlands. Rather cunning, really. So what is it? So the W bomb held 10 or 20 or possibly 15 pounds of TNT. I've seen various descriptions, and I'm not quite sure which one's right. And I think was originally designed to take 10 pounds of explosives, may have then been increased to 20, which involved an increase of about 25% in terms of volume, and it was described as being about the size and shape of a football. But obviously heavier if it's got 20 pounds of explosives in it. Now, the two pictures I've got up here, one is of a generic naval mine, because I cannot for the life of me, well, I cannot with a good 20 minutes, half hour of Google image search find what a W bomb type mine actually looked like. I can't find a description, I can't find a picture of one. So that's a generic picture of a mine taken from Wikipedia, and then I've got a photo here, which is of a much larger airdropped mine, to give an idea of the big difference between these things. So the other airdropped mine was 9 feet long, 17-inch diameter, and contained about 750 pounds of explosives. So quite a bit bigger than something just having 10 to 20 pounds. But I thought I'd use that to give an idea of scale. And then that's obviously a Lancaster bomber, and that's people. But yeah, so these were really quite different. And the idea for airdropping them, because the plan was to have them both just dropped in the river, and I'll explain the geography in just a second. But the other plan was to drop them from aircraft, and so they would come in a box, and the box would carry 6 of them, and you'd then just fit multiple boxes onto your aircraft, so that it was kind of modular. These days it would probably count as a cluster munition, but never mind. They did have a deactivation plan already, so that's something at least. Anyway, the idea is, where is this going to happen? So these are some maps trying to show you the Rhine and why they were accessing or going for the Rhine. And I'm just going to try and highlight something. So the key thing is, this area here is France, and this bit is Germany, and this bit is the Rhine. And then you've got Strasbourg, which, despite perhaps a Teutonic name, is French, at least at this point. And just running along here, you've got the Rhine. So the Rhine then enters Germany and goes doodle-doodle-doodle-doodle, or possibly not making those noises, all the way down to the Dutch border. And then it goes into the Netherlands. So that's where we don't want it to be exploding on people. Germany's actually got quite a comprehensive network of inland waterways, which you can see here on the other map. But the key thing about these ones were the accessibility for dropping mines. These maps are actually from contemporary usage of such waterways, either taken from places discussing the use of inland waterways for trade, even today, or canal cruises, or river cruises through Europe. So these are pretty big and important things. So just to look in a bit more detail. So the plan was to drop the bombs in, these bombs in around Strasbourg, or maybe a little bit further downstream. The key thing was they were going to go in just by, or before they get to Karlsruhe, which is in Germany, and then to have the bombs active for about a sort of 100 miles downstream. I have not yet taken a ruler or thing to work out quite what is 100 miles downstream of Strasbourg, or Karlsruhe, but never mind, that was the plan. They were also then going to top that up with dropping some more from the air around Koblenz here. So we were going to have quite a nice amount of things dropping in. Now, this was the initial plan. as I said, going 100 miles downstream. And just to sort of show a few other bits and pieces, you've also got the Maginot Line. So what that offered the naval personnel was safety. So around here, the Royal Navy forces were going to be dumping stuff in the river within 5 miles of the very good defences of the Maginot Line. Remember, the Maginot Line worked. The Germans did not attack across the Maginot Line. That was the purpose. It was supposed to give France time to mobilise. Well, they went to war in September, and France didn't get invaded until May. I think it worked. So for all that we say it was stupid, it wasn't. It worked. Other bits of the strategy might have been wanting a bit, but never mind. Now, the other thing you had was, and I believe it was the French who pointed this out, that they also controlled these two other rivers, the Moselle here, and this River Saar, which isn't on this map, so I think runs roughly about there. And again, these rivers cross the border and go into Germany, and then they flow into the Rhine here at Koblenz. And so you can drop your friendly little W bombs with their Alka-Seltzer based arming triggers and disarming timers in the rivers at about 3 points. Just literally walk up to river, drop in river. And by early April, there was certainly a party of Royal Navy personnel along the Rhine ready to do this. And so that's the geography. So we've done the technology, the genesis, the technology, the geography. Now, the question is, when does this happen? So the first mention is made about this in 1939, in November. Is the first time it's mooted to the kind of tech boffins. They have managed to have a prototype ready within about 2 weeks, and production's all going strong. So by March, they are saying we're on course to be ready for a kind of go date in kind of early April. And so the plan was that in early April you would have the right sort of moon so that you could combine dropping the mines in the river directly and also airdropping them by the RAF. Bearing in mind the Rhine is actually quite big, and hopefully you could drop it in bits in areas which aren't too heavily covered by flak. And then the idea was that they would keep up a steady flow of mines after the initial surge. So there was going to be continued production to sort of keep it going and keep it coming over time. Now, there was a plan actually that kind of the first thing that was going to happen was at sort of the day before the scheduled kind of mining operation, the British, the Allies, were going to follow standard political diplomatic niceties and announce that they were going to be mining something. Now, some people criticise this, but actually even at the time they rationalised it on I think 2 grounds really. One, they were aware of their international audience. They did not want to be seen by the neutral countries, which, remember, there's a lot more European neutral countries at this point, including Belgium and the Netherlands, Denmark, Norway, as well as, of course, the elephant in the room, the USA. Or was it the donkey in the room? I don't know. I don't really understand the American political party animals things. They don't make sense to me. Anyway, the idea was to be seen to be behaving properly with this, and the announcement of it of the operation was going to also include reminders that the Germans had been torpedoing civilian craft and laying mines willy-nilly and things like that. And the other thing is, the idea and the plan was for this tool to be disruptive, and a denial of the availability of the waterways to the Germans, rather than actually destructive. And so actually by publicising it, you do better with that. So that was the idea. Now, the difficulty is this, having been agreed at the Supreme War Council held in London on the 28th of March, where they also agreed to other mining operations like Operation WILFRED, with the corollary Operation or Plan R.4, which involved the mining of the Norwegian waters to try and kind of irritate the Germans, I think, really, by that point. Yeah, that one kind of makes sense, kind of doesn't. That had been a plan that had also been brewing and kicking around for quite a long time. The difficulty, and it was supposed to cut off the supply of Swedish iron ore that would travelled from Sweden when the Swedish ports were up in the far north were iced in, went across by rail to Narvik, and then sailed down inside Norwegian territorial waters to get to Germany. So the idea behind mining the Norwegian waters was to force German shipping out into international waters where they could be sunk. Or they stay in Norwegian waters and get sunk. Either way, they get sunk. The Germans don't get the iron ore, and it's supposed to affect their ability to fight a war. But by the time this is all agreed in late March, the Swedish ports are about to come back into action, so they don't need the Norwegian supply, the Norwegian route for supply, so it doesn't really make sense. Anyway, the French were suffering from a bad case of interwar French politics, which is to say vicious infighting and backbiting at the expense of the good of France, sadly. So there were objections raised by people who felt that they were currently not winning and not being the Prime Minister and things in the cabinet, and they were worried that they were apparently worried that the Germans would retaliate. You're at war with them. War. It's not a friendly thing. Anyway, so they were apparently worried the Germans were going to retaliate, and this was, of course, during it was just getting to the end of what's termed the Phony War, which was actually really the Germans refitting and rearming their surprisingly shattered and knackered forces from the campaign in Poland, which, although it had taken about 6 weeks, had actually been a very hard set of fighting for the German forces, and so they'd actually taken quite a lot of wear and tear on their gear and casualties and things like that. So this gave them a chance to rebuild and refit before they then invaded other places. Also, I think The winter of 39-40 might have been a particularly nasty one from memory. I can't remember if that's correct or not, though, so don't quote me on that. So that one was sitting, but then the on the 10th of May, well, on the kind of 8th, 9th of April, you get Denmark and Norway invaded, and everyone gets a bit distracted. And then on the 10th of May, the Germans attack in the west into France, Belgium, Netherlands, and Luxembourg. Now, the problem is they then immediately start dumping all these mines into the Rhine, and they get about 1,700 of the W bombs in there from the base around the Maginot Line. But the air forces are tied up, so they can't do the supporting mine drop, and they're really not able to assess the impact of the operation on the Germans, although reportedly even just this one-off dump had an effect of causing really quite a lot of disruption to German inland shipping along the Rhine for a few days at least, which was not bad. It's just it needed to be a sustained campaign as planned. Later on in the war, the RAF did pick up the W bomb and used it as part of their regular arsenal, using it on rivers, canals, other such freshwater things when they when it was appropriate to. So it was a proper, sensible weapon. It's just that the plan didn't get implemented quite when it was needed, and it was part of the idea of France and Britain aiming to fight Germany in a longer war, where cutting off trade and things and industry would be important, rather than the German goal of a short, sharp, quick war with their finely prepared plans and logistics and things to accomplish just that. So they could have a pretty good focus and use all of that general staff planning to get that achieved, whilst the Allies were stuck doing preparing for whatever the Germans might choose to throw at them, which is a lot harder. So, last of all, I just wanted to say that I've used a number of free online resources to put this together. Wikipedia, of course, useful jumping off point, or if not a great source in and of itself, because of course anyone can edit it, but a lot of people are very good and conscientious and usually has good links. The Operation Royal Marine is mentioned in Winston Churchill's 1948 World War II The Gathering Storm in Appendix Q. Now that's available at archive.org. There is McRae's 1971 book, Winston Churchill's Toy Shop, which is available. You can get a preview through Google Books. And I managed, certainly, I didn't pay anything, and I've managed to read the entire chapter on Operation Royal Marine. War History Online has got a bit about it, and I got some of my images from places like there's a Lancaster website which talks about air crews, which is where I got the picture of the Lancaster bomber with the big airdrop mine, and then I got the maps from a couple of places, finding it through Google Images, so primaryhomeworkhelp.co.uk and intechopen.com. And lastly, I would just like to say, if you enjoy kind of history online content, then do go to look at other people. People I think are really good are Alex Clarke, does naval history stuff, as does Drachinifel, and Dr. Katz, Reading the Past, military history visualized, military history not visualized. I love the Teutonic separation of that, although actually he's Austrian. Does that count as Teutonic? Don't know. Military aviation history, the Tank Museum, based at Bovington. They're all putting out lots. Oh, and Battleship New Jersey. They're the other ones I'm really enjoying, who are kind of either new or smaller or whatever. So there's loads of really good stuff out there. I am filling many happy hours during lockdown and things watching such content from people who are actually professional in this in some way or another. I'm definitely not. No one's paying me. You're only professional if people pay you to do things. Anyway, bye bye.